They told him he would never walk again, never wrestle again, and if he tried, it would kill him. Doctors weren't guessing. They were certain. His spine was broken in 3 places. His career was over before it truly began. The dream he chased since childhood was supposed to die on a cold hospital bed, but what if I told you that same man would become the most decorated world champion in wrestling history? Before the diamonds, before the jet rides, before the thunderous woo. Ric Flair was a young man staring straight at the end of his dream, and what he did next didn't just change his life. It changed wrestling forever. In 1975, a plane carrying Ric Flair crashed violently. Metal twisted, bodies slammed. Silence followed chaos. His spine snapped in 3 places. You'll never wrestle again. For most men, that would have been the end. Ric Flair refused to accept it. Ric Flair was born Richard Morgan Fleer on February 25, 1949, in Memphis, Tennessee. Within days of his birth, he was adopted by Dr. Richard Reed Fleer and his wife, Kathleen. They raised him in Minnesota, far from the bright lights and roaring crowds that would one day define his existence. There was no wrestling bloodline, no famous last name opening doors, no family legacy waiting to be claimed. Just an ordinary kid with extraordinary dreams. Growing up, Ric Flair wasn't destined for greatness. He wasn't the biggest kid in school. He wasn't the strongest. He wasn't even the most naturally gifted athlete. But what he possessed was something far more dangerous than raw talent. He had hunger, an insatiable, burning desire to be remembered, to matter, to become somebody that people couldn't ignore. As a teenager, Flair excelled in football and wrestling at Wayland Academy in Wisconsin. He was good, but not great. Talented, but not special. The kind of athlete who worked harder than everyone else just to keep up. After high school, he attended the University of Minnesota, where he continued playing football and amateur wrestling. But traditional sports weren't calling his name. Something else was pulling him. Something louder. Something more theatrical. Professional wrestling. In the late 1960s, professional wrestling wasn't the global phenomenon it would become. It was regional, territorial, a traveling circus of larger-than-life personalities performing in smoky arenas and county fairgrounds. But to Ric Flair, it was everything. He saw champions like Buddy Rogers, the original Nature Boy, commanding audiences with charisma and confidence. He watched how they walked into a room and owned it, how they spoke and people listened, how they transformed ordinary moments into unforgettable spectacles. Flair didn't just want to wrestle. He wanted to be that, to become the man everyone remembered long after the lights went out. In 1972, Ric Flair began training under Vern Gagne, one of the most respected trainers and champions in professional wrestling. Gagne's training camp was legendary for its brutality. It wasn't about learning choreography or memorizing moves. It was about survival. Gagne pushed trainees to their absolute limits. Hours of grueling conditioning, endless repetitions of fundamental techniques, physical punishment designed to weed out anyone who wasn't completely committed. Many quit. Ric Flair never considered it. He absorbed every lesson, studied every detail, watched how veterans controlled crowds with a single gesture, how they built drama with their body language, how they made people believe in something they knew was predetermined. Professional wrestling wasn't fake to Ric Flair. It was performance art at its highest level. After completing his training, Flair began working the territories. This was how wrestlers built their careers in the 1970s. You traveled from city to city, promotion to promotion, working for different organizations and proving yourself night after night. The pay was terrible. The conditions were worse. Long drives through the night to reach the next town, sleeping in cheap motels or sometimes in the car, eating fast food because that's all you could afford, wrestling multiple matches per week, sometimes injured, always exhausted, but every match was a lesson. Every crowd was a test. Flair wrestled in the American Wrestling Association. He worked matches in various National Wrestling Alliance territories. He learned how to work with different opponents, adapt to different styles, and connect with different audiences. Slowly, steadily, he was building something. Then, on October 4th, 1975, everything changed. Ric Flair was traveling with several other wrestlers on a chartered Cessna 310 from Charlotte to Wilmington, North Carolina. It was a routine flight, something they'd done countless times before. The weather was bad. Visibility was poor. The plane was struggling. Then, without warning, it went down. The impact was catastrophic. The aircraft crashed violently, tearing apart on impact. Metal screamed and twisted. Bodies were thrown against the wreckage. The pilot, 64-year-old Joseph Michael Farkas, died on impact. Ric Flair survived, but barely. His back was broken in 3 places. Vertebrae shattered. Nerves damaged. His body was a broken machine that doctors didn't believe could be repaired. Johnny Valentine, a wrestling veteran also on the flight, suffered a crushed vertebra and would never wrestle again. Bob Bruggers, another wrestler on board, also sustained career-ending injuries when Ric Flair woke up in the hospital. The doctors delivered their verdict: your wrestling career is over. You may never walk normally again if you attempt to wrestle with these injuries. The impact could paralyze you or kill you. They weren't trying to scare him. They were stating medical facts. For most 26-year-old men lying in a hospital bed with a shattered spine, that diagnosis would have been the end. The dream would die right there. You'd move on, find another career, accept reality. Ric Flair looked at those doctors and made a decision that would define the rest of his life. He refused to accept their ending. Rehabilitation was agony. Every movement sent shockwaves of pain through his broken body. Physical therapy sessions felt like torture. Simple tasks that healthy people never thought about became monumental challenges: standing without assistance, walking without limping, bending without collapsing. But Ric Flair approached recovery the same way he approached everything else in his life, with absolute, unwavering obsession. He didn't just want to walk again. He wanted to wrestle again. And not just wrestle, but wrestle at the highest possible level. Doctors thought he was insane. Friends worried he'd kill himself. Promoters assumed his career was finished. Flair worked anyway. He studied his body's new limitations, analyzed what movements caused pain and which ones he could still perform, began redesigning his entire wrestling style around his injuries. He couldn't take bumps the same way anymore. His back couldn't absorb the same impact. So he learned new ways to fall, new ways to protect himself while still making everything look devastating to the audience. He transformed his weakness into a new kind of strength. Most wrestlers who suffered serious injuries either retired or returned as diminished versions of themselves, slower, weaker, scared. When Ric Flair returned to the ring in 1976, he wasn't diminished, he was transformed. He wrestled with a newfound intensity. Every match felt urgent. Every moment felt important. Because he knew, in ways other wrestlers didn't, that everything could end in an instant. That urgency translated into something magical. By the late 1970s, Ric Flair was evolving into something professional wrestling had never quite seen before. He wasn't just a wrestler. He was a complete character. A living, breathing embodiment of excess, confidence, and championship mentality. He adopted the Nature Boy nickname, paying homage to Buddy Rogers, and made it his own. The bleached blonde hair became his signature. The custom-made robes, covered in sequins and feathers, became legendary. The strut, the woo, the arrogant confidence, it all became iconic. But it wasn't an act. That's what people didn't understand. Ric Flair lived the character 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The limousines were real. The expensive suits were real. The Rolex watches were real. When Flair said he was stylin' and profilin', he meant it literally. Inside the ring, his work rate was unprecedented. While most top champions protected themselves, working lighter schedules to preserve their bodies, Ric Flair did the opposite. He wrestled over 300 matches per year, sometimes more. No off-season, no breaks, just constant, relentless performance. Night after night, city after city, Flair delivered 60-minute matches that left crowds exhausted. His stamina was superhuman. His ability to tell stories in the ring was unmatched. His matches didn't feel choreographed, they felt real, because in many ways they were. The chops that echoed through arenas actually hurt. The submission holds actually applied pressure. The blood was often real. The exhaustion was never fake. Professional wrestling was predetermined. But Ric Flair's performances were authentic. In 1981, Ric Flair defeated Dusty Rhodes to win his first NUO World Heavyweight Championship. It was the beginning of a championship reign that would define an entire era of professional wrestling. The NUO World Heavyweight Championship wasn't just a title. It was the title, the most prestigious championship in professional wrestling. The champion was expected to travel across the country, defending the title in different territories. Representing the entire National Wrestling Alliance. It was exhausting, demanding, relentless. Ric Flair thrived on it. He defended the championship against every top contender in every territory. Dusty Rhodes, Harley Race, Ricky Steamboat, Terry Funk, Kerry Von Erich, Lex Luger, Sting. The list of legendary opponents was endless. Each feud was a masterpiece. Each match pushed the boundaries of what professional wrestling could be. His 1989 trilogy with Ricky Steamboat is still considered among the greatest series of matches in wrestling history. Chi-Town Rumble, Clash of the Champions, WrestleWar, 3 consecutive 5-star matches that set a standard few have ever matched. When World Championship Wrestling emerged in the late 1980s, Ric Flair became its franchise player. The W World Heavyweight Championship became synonymous with his name. He held it multiple times, defending it in sold-out arenas across the country. In the 1990s, when the Monday Night Wars between W and WWE reached their peak, Flair jumped between both companies. Proving his value in either promotion, he won the WWE Championship twice, the World Heavyweight Championship, the Intercontinental Championship, the United States Championship, Tag Team Championships. By the time his in-ring career wound down, Ric Flair had won 16 officially recognized World Championships. Many historians believe the actual number is higher, closer to 20 or more, depending on how you count title reigns in different territories and organizations, but the numbers don't tell the complete story. Ric Flair wasn't just collecting championships. He was defining what it meant to be a champion. The lifestyle was legendary. The price was devastating. Every airplane ride, Flair remembered the crash. Every bump in the ring reminded him his back was held together by willpower and painkillers. Every year added new injuries to an already broken body. Multiple back surgeries attempted to repair the damage from decades of abuse. His knees were destroyed from thousands of figure-for-leg locks. His shoulders ached from countless clotheslines. Internal organs suffered from the cumulative trauma of being thrown, slammed, and beaten for entertainment, but physical pain was just part of the cost. The financial success was real. At his peak, Ric Flair earned millions from wrestling paydays, merchandise sales, endorsements, and appearances. Over his lifetime, his total earnings reached tens of millions of dollars. He spent it all, and then some. Custom suits that cost thousands of dollars, alligator shoes, diamond rings, Rolex watches, the finest restaurants, the most expensive hotels, private jets, limousines, living every single day like you'd already won. Because to Ric Flair, image was everything. If you wanted to be the best, you had to look like the best. You had to live like the best. You couldn't fake it. The problem was that lifestyle was unsustainable. Even for a champion earning millions, multiple divorces took their toll. Alimony payments, child support, legal fees. The money that came in went right back out, often faster than it arrived. Still, Flair never changed, because changing would mean admitting the character was just an act. And to Ric Flair, it was never an act. It was who he was. By the 2000s, Ric Flair was wrestling past any reasonable retirement age. His body was a collection of old injuries barely held together. Every match required more painkillers, more preparation, more risk, but he kept going, because stopping meant facing everything he'd been outrunning for decades. In 2008, WWE orchestrated a retirement angle for Flair. His final match at WrestleMania 24 against Shawn Michaels was an emotional spectacle. Flair lost, and per the storyline stipulation, his in-ring career was over. It was supposed to be the perfect ending. The legendary champion riding off into the sunset with dignity intact, Ric Flair couldn't stay retired. Within a few years, he was wrestling again for NA Wrestling, unable to let go of the one thing that defined him. Then in August 2017, everything caught up with him. Ric Flair's organs began shutting down. His kidneys failed. His heart struggled. His body, after decades of punishment, was finally giving up. He was rushed to the hospital and placed in a medically induced coma. Emergency surgery attempted to repair the damage. Doctors gave him a 20% chance of survival. His family gathered. Friends prepared themselves for the worst. The wrestling world began writing obituaries. For the second time in his life, Ric Flair was staring at death. And for the second time, he refused to accept it. After 11 days in a coma, he woke up. The recovery was long and painful, but Flair survived. Again, today, Ric Flair is retired from in-ring competition, but his presence still dominates professional wrestling. Every confident champion borrows something from him. Every flashy entrance traces back to his influence. Every cutting promo echoes his voice. Wrestlers who never shared a ring with him study his matches. Championships still feel incomplete without his approval. His name is the measuring stick by which all others are judged. He survived a broken back that should have ended everything. He survived a plane crash that killed others. He survived decades of physical punishment that would have destroyed ordinary men. He survived organ failure that doctors said was nearly unsurvivable. Each time, Ric Flair rewrote the ending others wrote for him. Behind the diamonds and the robes and the woo was a simple truth. Ric Flair never accepted limitations. Not from doctors. Not from his body. Not from reality itself. He wasn't lucky. He was relentless. The championships fade into history. The money comes and goes. The body breaks down and recovers and breaks down again. But legends, true legends, don't disappear. They evolve. They adapt. They become something bigger than themselves. When Ric Flair walks into a room today, history walks with him. Not because he was perfect, but because he refused to quit when quitting made sense. Broken back, near death, financial ruin, personal tragedy, total collapse. He survived it all because Ric Flair wasn't just a wrestler. Ric Flair was wrestling, stylin', profilin', limousine ridin', jet flying, forever timeless, forever the nature boy. Woo!